Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Booth. I'm here to talk about your personal weather system. I have been working on the idea of how creators show up for their work for 10 years now. I've started doing some serious work around 2023, looking into my own personal patterns. I happen to be ADHD and bipolar, and I'm a painter and a writer and a creator and a whole bunch of things. And I was trying to figure out what was going on with me being able to succeed in doing the things that I love to do. And for example, as somebody with ADHD, those of you with ADHD, you're going to relate to this. I tend to start projects and then something like 10 days later, I put it in the closet and it's gone. And I never return to it. And that's very frustrating. It's very disappointing and it's very upsetting for me and for the people around me. I do understand that people who don't have ADHD don't really have that problem, but understanding how your personal rhythms work really makes a big difference. And so by weather, what I mean is sometimes you have sunny days where everything is wonderful and everything is doable and everything is something that you can accomplish. And then you have cloudy days where hardly anything is doable and you might as well just give up. And those of us who have been doing creativity for a long time understand that they're not actually going to give up. They just may reconfigure what they're excited about. For example, you can see around me there's a bunch of paintings. I've been painting since November 28th, 2015, which was almost exactly 10 years ago today. So 10 years ago tomorrow. I would paint every couple of days, then skip a week, then paint for 2 more days, then skip 2 weeks, and then knock out 3 or 4 paintings in a row, and then skip a month. And it was very inconsistent, but there was a pattern to it. And it's one that is recognizable. At one point, I thought it was neurotransmitters. One of my therapists suggested that I have low neurotransmitter days, low dopamine or low serotonin. And she meant it metaphorically, not literally, because dopamine doesn't have low days and high days. It has low hours and high hours. And the same thing with serotonin. That model just doesn't work. But the patterns are there, and it's the patterns that make things really interesting. For example, I took all of the data that I had on all the paintings and the days that I created them, all the notes that I made to myself and others about whether or not I was feeling depressed or down or having a low neurotransmitter day or whatever it happened to be, my diary entries, everything that I could think of to objectively show what it is that I've got, how my days were going on a kind of a longitudinal basis. And I fed that into ChatGTP, to be completely candid with you. And I said, are there patterns here? And it said, absolutely there are patterns here. There's a long-term pattern of 90 days. At the low point, it's more of an acoustic wave where it does this than it is a sine wave that does that. And at the compression point, things are deeper and more clear, but not necessarily easier. When the pattern is more variable, things may be very simple to do and very straightforward to stay with, or they may be just awful. And the other thing that I noticed, or the AI did, was that I had a 10-day pattern that was within the 90-day pattern. The 10-day pattern was basically how much attention I could give to what I call dull or shallow projects. And a lot of people will understand a shiny project. A shiny project is something with a lot of meaning that really is something you can sink your teeth into. You can hyper focus on it and stay with it for hours and be very happy doing it. And a shallow project is like doing your taxes or something with low meaning, checking up on emails or whatever it is that you've got going on. On the high days of that 10-day pattern, it was easier to do the emails and the taxes than it was on the low days. On the low days, you had to be working on a very important project, something that was very meaningful in order for you to be able to focus on it. Otherwise, you're just having a lousy day. And I used to look at that as, oh, I must be having a bad day. I wasn't having a bad day. What I was having was a deep day. And if anything that wasn't deep enough in terms of meaningfulness, I couldn't apply myself to it. And it happens every 10 days. And so once I understood the patterns were there, they weren't dopamine and serotonin. I originally thought the long one was serotonin and the short one was dopamine, and I was wrong. But the patterns are there. And once I started to understand that's what was going on, it became easier for me to have perspective. And that's really what it was about. When things are difficult, like, for example, if you're trying to lose weight, I recently lost 20 pounds. And if you're trying to lose weight and you hit a plateau, how do you know how long that plateau is going to last? You don't. You have to ride it out. You have to keep doing the things. And when you don't have any perspective, how long are you supposed to ride it out before you give up? A lot of people, especially ADHD, bipolar people, whatever, don't have a lot of perspective and they give up too early. Okay? So the idea behind the cycle tracking is to give you perspective. Every 90 days, you're going to be in a compression pattern, and then 45 days later, you're going to be in an expansion pattern, and then there's going to be another compression pattern 45 days later. I want to make sure that we're clear on something. 90 days is my pattern, okay? According to the data that I have, at one point it was 270 days. It may be 45 days in a month or a year. But right now, 90 days is a consistent pattern since January of 2024 to today. And so it's easy for me to know that if I can last the 90 days from when I'm having a bad day, actually I only need to last 45 days, because if I'm having a bad day, like I hit a plateau in my weight loss, 45 days later, everything is going to be better. Okay? It's not a perfect pattern, but it's a pretty good pattern. The other thing I wanted to point out is that for the short pattern, the 10-day pattern, my 10-day pattern, it may be different for you, is at the bottom of the pattern, it's really important that you do meaningful things. At the top of the pattern, you can do whatever. Everything looks shiny. But the interesting thing is if you look at it as a bell curve, one of these things, if you make decisions on what it is that you want to be doing with your life, when you're just out of the low point or you're just coming into the low point, the chances of it sticking are much higher. If you make decisions about what you want to do with your life, where you're at the top, where everything looks shiny, where everything looks magnificent, the chance of it lasting more than 3 days is lower, okay? And again, this is my 10-day pattern. It may be different for you. But the point is that if you're having one of those magnificent days where everything is wonderful, wait 3 days before you decide to reconfigure your entire life, okay? Because that will give that idea a chance to feel the gravity of meaningfulness. And once you start putting that meaningfulness pressure on it, it may come apart, and then again, it may not. There's no way to know. I started this project, this Genius Publishing Studio project, probably 8 days ago, which would have been right at the bottom of one of these curves. And it survived being at the top, and now it's surviving being at the bottom. Okay? So it wasn't like I just jumped into this today. And if you have a sense of your own cycles, whatever that happened to be, whether it's 10 days or 15 days or 20 days, whether it's 90 days or 270 days, whatever it is, those two cycles, start paying attention to when you're being creative. Start paying attention to when you're producing. Make notes of those things. Make notes of how you're feeling during that time. And if you do that thing, then you'll have a lot more perspective on the tough days than you have now. And that's really my message for today. My solution to this is journaling. I'm a big believer in journaling. You do it once in the morning, you do it once at night. You write down what was shiny last night and what do I wish I didn't have to stop doing. Okay, what is still shiny this morning? And then you can also write, what's better today that wasn't as good yesterday? Those two questions are very good questions for understanding how you're feeling and how your personal patterns are. Give that a whirl, and we will discuss this more as we go along. Thank you very much.